In this problem, we are told that 20 pets were rescued from a pet shelter last Saturday. I had cats and dogs at the shelter, and the cost to adopt each is shown below. Okay, part A says if the number of dogs that was rescued is represented as D, okay, so we're going to have D represent the number of dogs at the shelter. Write an expression to represent the number of cats that were rescued. At this point of Math 092, we have only learned to solve equations with one variable. So they told us the variable to use. We know that it's going to be D. So we need to come up with an expression then that uses D for the number of cats. So let's think about this for a moment here. So if I made up some value, so I start with 1. If there's only one dog, and the total, so total means add, if 1 plus what? How many cats? If there's a total of 20 altogether, pets altogether. So if there was one dog, we would have that there were 19 cats. Okay, now let's say that there were 5 dogs. So if there were 5 dogs, how many cats? So that the total is 20. So 5 plus 15, there would be 15 cats, because the total altogether is 20. Now let's say that, again, I'm making these values up, there's 10 dogs. If there's 10 dogs, then there would have to be 10 cats. So, how could we, using this variable here, using D, these numbers here, how can we get the values in this column here using the number of dogs, if we knew how many dogs? So let's think about it this way. The number of dogs is D. Okay, we don't know how many cats there are, but we can't use another variable because D's already in the problem. So we've learned how to solve equations. If we don't want D here, we can subtract D to both sides. So the number of cats is equal to, if we take 20, because there's 20 total pets, and if we subtract the dogs. So think about it. If we take these numbers here, so if we take 1, and we do 20 minus 1 dog, that's 19 cats. Okay, so if there were 5 dogs, if we put 5 here, 20 total pets minus the 5 dogs would equate to 19 cats. So this expression right here, if you plugged in the number of dogs for D, you're going to get how many cats. So our expression that represents cats is if there's 20 animals, if you take away the number of dogs, this expression represents the number of cats, and this represents the number of dogs. So part A, we would have 20 minus D represents the number of cats. If we take the number of dogs from 20, that leaves us the cats. Okay, part B says, at the end of the rescues on Saturday, a total of $931 has been collected for all 20 rescues. Write an equation in terms of D, so again our equation should only have D in it, that can be solved to find the number of dogs and the number of cats that were rescued. Okay, so we were given that each dog costs $55. So this dog to be rescued is $55, this dog is $55, this dog is $55, but the problem is we don't know how many dogs were rescued. That's what D represents. But we know for each one you add on 55 plus 55 plus 55 for each dog that is rescued. So when we add the same number over and over and over again, that's the same thing as multiplication. So if we had done, instead of 55 plus 55 plus 55, instead if we had done 55 times 3 dogs, that would tell us $165 was spent on dog rescues. So if we take 55 and multiply it by the number of dogs, which we don't know, which is D, 55D represents the cost of the dog rescues. Okay, so now the cats. It tells us the cats, each one is 42. Each one. But we don't know how many cats. But each one, it's going to be $42 plus $42 plus $42 for every cat. So adding 42 over and over again is the same thing as multiplication. So here we took 55, because that's the cost of the dogs, and multiplied by our variable here. Well, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take $42, because that's the cost, just like the 55 was the cost, and this represents the number of dogs. And then we're going to multiply the 42 by 20 minus D, because that represents the number of cats. Okay, so this right here represents the total cost for the dogs, and this represents the total cost for the cats. Well, in the problem here, they tell us that $931 has been collected all together. So we have the dogs plus the cats, and the total for the dogs and the total for the cats, it says, should be $931. So now we have an equation that we can solve. Alright, so first thing when we solve this equation is we need to distribute here. So 42 times 20 and 42 times negative D. Okay, so then after we do this distributive property where we multiply 42 to 20 minus D, now we're going to go ahead and combine like terms, because we have terms with D's on the same side of the equal sign here. So we have 55 minus 42, which is 13D. Now, if you're using the steps that we learned in class, I highlight where the variable is, and that helps me remember that I need to get rid of what's next to it. And then the very last step, when this variable term is isolated, we divide by the coefficient of D, which is 13. And we get D equals 7. So remember that D represents the number of dogs. So we just got 7. So there are 7 dogs, and if there's 7 dogs, now we know how many cats there are, because the number of cats is 20. There's 20 total animals, and you take away, now that we know that there are 7 dogs, 20 minus 7 leaves 13 cats. So there are 7 dogs rescued and 13 cats. So if we think about it, they add to 20 like they should, because it says that there are 20 total animals, and that the total earned was $931. So if we want to check our answer here, if we take out our D, we found that it's 7, and that the number of cats, right, if we take out that D right here, that the number of dogs was 7. That's how come we know that the number of cats, that this is 13. So if dogs cost $55 and there's 7 of them, that means $385. And then if there are 13 cats and each one's $42 to rescue, that is $546. And then if we combine, we get $931. We get the same thing on both sides, so we would know that our answers are correct. So we have now, it asked us to check the reasonableness of our answer. So it works.